So we will get started here. Um, so what do you want? People that come to these classes, and I've been teaching these classes now for over 2+ years and have taught over 2,500 agencies and businesses. Typically, there's two people in my classroom. There's the end users, the public safety agencies, and then there's the businesses that supply solutions to those agencies. The agencies themselves, I always find they want to add more value to their community than ever before. They're typically working with solutions. They're doing the best they can with what they have, but they're always looking for something that's going to add more value and provide more support for their communities. I also find that public safety agencies in this market, they're in the need for consistent funding. And, sometimes they have an abundance of funding. Sometimes it's really hard to put together funding for whatever they're looking to solve. And we'll dive into that in a little bit of why that happens. And also to solve problems that exist in their communities. Public safety agencies, I find in my definition of public safety agencies would be 911 dispatch, coroner's offices, emergency medical service, emergency management, law enforcement, fire service, public health. This class is also good for security for schools. I have hospitals that have been coming to these classes recently as well, due to the fact that they belong to a hospital coalition that can go get grants. But in general, public safety really wants to solve problems. They want to add value to the citizens that live in those communities that they work in. Now, if you're a public safety business, typically you want to add more value to the public safety market than ever before, more sales leads from the marketing campaigns, more accurate sales pipeline to grow their business, and more sales in general. And so, the question then comes to why? Why are all these things that you want important? And typically they're important because of problems that are currently existing in your communities. With public safety agencies, 90 to 98% of their budget goes to payroll or gasoline, or a combination of both. And so when you have 2 to 10% of your budget left over and you're trying to figure out how to solve problems in variety of parts of your agency, it gets difficult. I remember when I was selling SWAT gear, because I started in this industry back in 2001, I sold SWAT equipment. So from 0106, what I would experience is agencies calling me up or faxing me a list of equipment solutions. It would be sometimes 30 different items. I get them pricing. They come back to me and say, good news, we got approvals. We can buy 2 out of the 30 items. And I was surprised by that. And what I've learned is, well, when you don't have a lot of budget money, you have to figure out what can't be bought this year and what's going to have to go on the list next year. I've also experienced over the last probably close to 10 to 15 years, or at least, more and more elected officials being involved with what public safety agencies can purchase. So, to give you an example, I had a phone call yesterday with an agency that was looking to buy decon equipment for their vehicles, and for their trucks, their instruments, their equipment, their stations, their buildings in the community. And I said, okay, who has to approve it? And the first thing they said was their chief. And then their chief would go in front of city council. And so what I see that across the board is more and more elected officials want to say, what are you buying? Why are you buying it? And needing to get those approvals before even moving forward. Now, the businesses are seeing the following problems. One, a long sales process. because of the fact elected officials want to say in what's purchased, this is slowing the process down to anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And we're not talking about big projects here. We're talking about projects that are for, you know, 4 figures or more, and that is a problem. And so, with that in mind, it's not like these approvals happen every day. They usually will happen once a month. So when we're talking about approvals, it's adding on time because the monthly meetings. Elected officials will vote 5 to 7 times on average before making a purchase. The other thing is there's a need for meaningful and productive conversations in the public safety market. And what I mean by that is, I'll use an example of trade shows. So if you go to a trade show, may it be in the fire market or police market or EMS or emergency management as an example, I've been to all those conferences or going to them in the past 90 days. The vendors or the businesses will set up a booth and they're waiting for people to come in the booth to talk about their solution. And the challenge, though, is some of these conversations don't happen because there's no money. So I always talk to a business at a trade show and I say, okay, I want you to look at the room and I want you to watch the traffic flow. And I want you to ask yourself how many people stop in front of your booth, look at what you offer, and walk on by. And the reason they're doing that is they're not going to start a conversation with you if they have no money. And so I create a formula, and the formula is end users plus needs minus funding equal less conversations. They're not going to talk to you if they have no idea where they're going to get money. And I forgot to point out one thing. I'm recording this and I'm going to have this on our YouTube channel. So here's the good news. Anyone that wants to record this, don't worry. It's going to be available on our YouTube channel probably by the end of next week. And I'll make sure at the end of the presentation, you have a link to where to go to see it. But back to the formula. This formula also can be changed if you have funding solutions. So the formula that my clients or the businesses I work with are able to deploy now, because we provide a grant solution for them, is end users plus needs plus funding equals more conversations. And so to me, if you're selling into a market that doesn't know when it's going to have funding, how do you manage your business? And this is what I tell companies all the time, is you're selling to a market that is hoping they're going to get money. I mean, I'll use the example of buying in our personal lives. When I buy something in my personal life, like recently, my family, we bought a couch for our living room because my bachelor couch finally died. And it lived a long time. My wife did not like the fact how long it lived. So what did we do? We went to the furniture store. In our minds, we knew how much we wanted to spend. We also knew how much we could afford if we did monthly payments, because a lot of times these stores offer 12 months of no interest. So my philosophy is let's use their money instead of ours. So we go into the store, we find a couch, it fits our budget, and we buy it. Now, in the public safety world, it works a little different. So, in the public safety world, you'll go out as a business, you'll do a demonstration. Maybe it's online, maybe it's face-to-face, maybe you're demoing at a trade show, you generate a quote. And then from there, the end user has to go get money or has to go find money. And the reason they have to do that is they first have to identify the need and the solution and find out what that solution costs. And then they got to go figure out where the money's at. So it's the complete opposite of way we buy. And that's one of the reasons why this sales process is so long. So my philosophy is, if you're supplying a solution, it could be software, it could be equipment, it could be training, it could be a type of service. Why not know where your money's at? Why not know where there's grants? And why not understand how to play that grant game to help your customer? Because in the end, they buy from you more. And I learned that firsthand. When I started selling SWAT equipment, I inherited a territory that was doing about $1 million a year. By year 4, I grew it to $6 million a year. And by year 5, I grew it to $9 million a year. So I was selling $9 million a year of equipment. And the only reason I was selling it wasn't because I was the best at using it or the best at knowing the ins and out of it. The reason I sold so much equipment is I knew where the money was at. And I knew how to coach the end user, the agency, how to maneuver through the process. So that's when I decided in 2007 to start this company, Dynamic International. And for 16 years, that's what we've been doing, coaching businesses on where there's grant money for their customers, working with their customers and helping them maneuver through the grant process, literally holding their hand if it's their first time, or giving them information and being more of a stand back and be a resource type of coach for those experienced people. So how can you achieve this goal of being able to play the grant game? And there's really 3 areas. There's 3 areas I have learned over the years of what determines if you're going to be successful as an agency in getting a grant, and if you're going to be successful in growing your business by knowing where the money is and coaching your customers and how to get grants. And it's psychology, strategies, and a grant writing mindset. So let's talk about psychology. Goal setting. Clearly defining your goals and breaking them down into what I call SMART goals. If you've heard of SMART goals, put a yes in the chat. If you haven't, SMART goals are this: goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And this is a framework that helps you not only identify your goals, but to achieve them quicker. So if you're an agency, you have to be specific. What do you want? Measurable. How do you know you're getting closer to getting it? Achievable. Is it a realistic goal to have this project implemented in your agency? Relevant. How is it add value to the community? And time bound. When are you going to get this done? When are you going to draw a line in the sand and get this thing funded? Goals have to be SMART. Planning and organization. Developing a well-structured plan and organizing your tasks and resources effectively is going to enhance your productivity and efficiency. So you have to have a well thought out, implemented strategy on how you're going to get this project up and running. So from day 1 to 1 year, what are you going to do? You're going to, once you get the money, cut a PO to the business, get the assets from the business, get trained on those assets, notify the media, work the training of the assets into your agency consistently. These are things that the vendor can help you out with because they understand what it takes to implement their solution into your agency. So you can work hand in hand with them. Time management, prioritizing tasks, managing distractions, allocating time appropriately to different activities are going to help you progress toward your goals. One of the biggest pushbacks I hear from agencies when it comes to grants and working on getting a grant is I don't have any time. I have no time. I can't find the time. I haven't had time. I would hear that all the time. No pun intended. The reality is this, and this is what I teach agencies what to do. When you're working on a grant, Nobody expects you to do all that grant work in one day. The truth of the matter is, I've never met somebody that got into public safety to write grants for a living. It's come with the job. And let's be honest, it's come with the job. It goes on your plate, and a lot of your plates are really full. So it's very common it falls off the plate. So what I teach is carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day. If you can spend 10 to 15 minutes a day working on this grant, maybe you're filling out parts of the application, maybe it's making some phone calls with the grantors, and I'll explain why that's important later. Maybe it's writing some of your justification paper, and we'll go into that later as well. Whatever it is, if you can carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day, in about 3 to 4 weeks, you'll have something strong enough to submit. Also, if you can get a team together, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and work on it collectively and do a little bit each day, you'll move those chains and get closer to scoring that grant. Now, if you're a business, time management is simply this: follow up. A lot of the businesses I talk to, one of the biggest things they struggle with is follow up. They're great at demoing, they're great at getting information out, they're great at getting pricing, but the follow up is where things start falling through the cracks. And so when it comes to that, you have to set time aside to touch base with these people, these agencies, because out of sight's out of mind. And you got to make sure they have their needs fulfilled by you. So needs fulfilled includes, hey, how is it going on the grant? Hey, what can I do to help you out with the grant? Hey, do you need help finding additional grants? All that kind of conversation needs to go with your pricing, your bid specs, your brochures, your PDFs, your product information. You have to supply a full service solution to these customers, because the more you can supply that to them, the greater chance they're going to buy from you. So you have to learn to manage your time on both sides of the fence. So now what I want to talk about are grants, and one of the things we're going to talk about here is specifically what grants are out there. What are the most popular and common grants we see out there? And so typically when I give this class, this is one of the screens that people like to screen capture. So feel free to do a screen capture. You can either use your phone, or you can do I don't know what it is on a PC, but on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-3. Feel free to capture these screens. So right now, when it comes to the law enforcement side of the room, the 3 most popular grants I see are the JAG grant, or the Edward Byrne Memorial Grant, or the Justice Assistance Grant. This is a grant that's a formula grant. It's usually based off of crime rates times population. Very generalistic example. It probably goes into a little more detail than that. And this is used for a variety of solutions. Could be used for hiring, could be used for training, could be used for equipment, could be crime prevention programs. So a very comprehensive grant, very competitive within the department. Not difficult to get, because you're just really filling out a form. But once you get that money, that's when the competition begins. Then you have the COPS grant, Community-Oriented Policing Services. This program is, again, about hiring officers, getting policing strategies implemented, some equipment purchase, enhancing technology infrastructure. Very much another competitive grant internally, because there's so many different parts of the department that want to get a piece of that money. Then this is a more recent one, Office on Violence Against Women Formula Grants. Now, this is a grant that provides funding to both the state and the local government agencies to respond to violence against women. It's victim services, training law enforcement, prevention programs. So not as much about equipment or hiring personnel, but more about, making sure that you're taking care of the citizens of the community through programs and training. Now, this page here is going to cover grants that are really good for both police and fire. And, the first one is the Homeland Security Grant Program. And that provides funding to state, local, tribal, and territorial governments to enhance preparedness capabilities. So, it's terrorism. It's been expanded to other types of hazards, both man-made and natural disasters. And Homeland Security grant program is made up of 3 different types of grants. You have the state Homeland Security grant program. You have UASI, which I listed below, and Operation Stone Garden. So going in reverse, Operation Stone Garden is a grant for border states, border of Mexico, border of Canada, bordering bodies of water. It's designed to help out typically with drug interdiction. Not a bad grant though, $90 million. Typically it's been pretty stable over the years. But that's a grant for those border states. Then you have the state Homeland Security grant program, which goes to pretty much everybody in the United States except for the UASI regions, which there's about 25 of them. And that's going to be, again, for the same thing, terrorism, man-made and natural disasters. There's probably close to 700 different products that can get bought through the state Homeland Security grant. And those could be products for 911, for emergency management, for fire service, for law enforcement, for EMS, for public health, and the coroner's offices. And then you have UASI, Urban Area Security Initiative. And I pulled that one out because that one is for the 25 most populated portions of the United States. And this is a program funding state and local governments, help them prepare and respond to terrorism and other threats. Nowadays, threats could be natural threats like hurricanes, earthquakes, wildland fires, tornadoes. I'm seeing even programs going into the global warming, portion, or climate change, as they like to say nowadays. So it could be equipment, it could be training, emergency plans. Very similar to state Homeland, just for those 25 regions, though. And the Homeland Security Grant Program, UASI, and the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which that grant is to assist, everything from state and local, tribal territories in enhancing emergency management capabilities and preparedness for all hazards, both man-made and natural. But the reason I group the Homeland Security Grant Program in with the Emergency Management Performance Grant is because those grants, a lot of agencies think, well, I'm EMS, I can't get a Homeland Security grant, or I'm public health, I can't get a UASI grant. And the truth is, those programs are positioned and geared to fund projects for products, not necessarily agencies. So if you're an agency that uses a specific product, you can get that grant money. It doesn't mean you have to be an emergency management agency to get the EMPG grant. You could be a firehouse. You could be a law enforcement agency. The way it works is this. Those grants are connected to products on FEMA's authorized equipment list website. So if you've heard of the AEL, put a yes in the chat. If you haven't, let me explain what it is. The AEL was started after the Oklahoma City bombings, and it wanted to give first responders a place to find specific equipment. The 9/11 happened, and they expanded it and they connected it to Homeland Security grants. So you can look up a product on the AEL, like body armor or SCBAs, and it will give you the line item number and connect it to specific DHS FEMA grants. So all you have to do is Google FEMA AEL, and when you Google that, it'll be one of the first 2 or 3 items. Click on it, it'll take you right to the page and start getting familiar. You can download a CSV file if you want to see the entire AEL. If you want to search, you can do drop downs and search by categories and subcategories and products. But I recommend everybody, may you be a business or an end user, get more familiar with the AEL, because that's documentation that there are grants out there for the projects you're looking for. And the more you can convey that to a city government or a county government, the less pushback you're going to get from them in terms of pursuing a grant, because FEMA recognizes that these needs are important and they connect them to specific grants. And then AFG. AFG is the most popular fire service grant. It's usually about $400 to $450 million a year. It's been a very popular grant over the years, provides funding to fire departments for firefighting, EMS, fire prevention, fire safety. Probably the most well-run grant when it comes to training on how to be successful. Success rates typically 1 to 5. Typically every 5 applications that are submitted, 1 gets accepted. So it's a pretty competitive grant. But these are the most popular grants that I see agencies either know about or consistently apply for. What I want to do now is talk about grants that most people aren't thinking about. And the grants here, I'll give you examples of all of them. Some I have examples on this page, and I recommend, again, take a screen capture of this, because these types of grants are a little bit different. So the first one's ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act. There's about half of that money is left, and it needs to be spent by the end of December of 2024. And ARPA isn't your typical grant, meaning you're not going to fill out an application. You're not going to have to write a justification paper. It's more of your community filled out a form. And the form you filled out very basically covered population, stability of the home, poverty levels. So if you were 100,000 person community, as an example, you probably got somewhere between 25 and $30 million. It's a lot of money. I mean, when we're talking about AFG and we're talking about $400 to $450 million, and I just gave you an example of 100,000 person community getting 25 to 30 million, that's a significant amount of money. The question is, how do you get that money? How do you play that game, as I like to say? And I call it a game not because I don't consider it important. I call it a game because we've all played games when we were kids, and we like to get good at games, and we like to learn strategies on how to win games. And that's how you got to think about grants. You have to think about strategies. How can I win this specific grant game when it comes to the American Rescue Plan Act, as an example? And it's this. That money probably landed in one of 3 spots in your community. Either your county commissioner has access to those funds, your county emergency management director, or your county finance department. If you're a big city, your city manager would have it, or your city finance department, or your city emergency management agency. But most of us are in communities where the county has control of those funds. So that money's sitting there, and it's been sitting there for a while. They started distributing it in 2020, right around springtime. And then they did a second distribution in springtime of 2022. Again, we're talking about $350 billion with a B. So this is a lot of money. So how do you get that money? One, you have to have your project laid out in front of you, meaning you have to be able to describe your project, specifically what's the problem, how big of a problem is it, showing how big it is, showing how the project's will get solved by implementation of this project, specifically how it saves time or how it saves money, how it reduces liability, how it saves lives, or a combination of those, and how you're going to implement it. And you have to know how much money you're going to need. So you're going to need a quote that gets it to the penny. So you're going to want to have that all ready to go when you have a conversation with the county, either the county commissioner, the county finance department, or the county emergency management agency. And what you're going to explain is, well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to call up and you're going to explain that we're looking to find out if we can get any of the American Rescue Plan Act funds move to our project. Here's our project. Here's the problem our project's going to solve. Here's how big this problem is and then why we want to solve it. And this is how we're going to implement it. And this is the dollar amount we need. What has to happen for some of that money to get moved to this project? Now, you're probably going to hear the first answer. And the first answer is the money's been allocated. That's okay. That's not a bad answer. Allocated doesn't mean the money's not available. Allocated means it's been earmarked toward a certain amount of projects. Couple things you need to keep in mind. There's always leftover money because they always overestimate what these projects are going to cost. You know, to give you an example, I was working with an agency in Tennessee that wanted to get area scene lighting. And they talked to their county commissioner. County commissioner said, well, we have $1 million earmarked for a fire truck. So my customer, my clients stayed in contact with them every month or so. And then after a couple months, they bought the truck. The truck cost $914,000. So there was $86,000 left over. That $86,000 more than covered the cost of the lighting. So they were able to get the money for the lighting. There's always going to be gap money, as I like to call it. And gap money is the money that's left over after these allocated projects have been completed, or the gap money is just a little bit of money in between all these projects, that they keep as, just in case money. So have the conversation about this money. If they tell you it's allocated, that's great. When would be a good time for me to follow up? I want to stay in contact with you in case there is any leftover funds. And you want to be persistent, but you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to put them off, but you want to stay in contact with them. So ask them when's a good time for me to touch base with you again, and then follow up with them. And that is the best plan when it comes to ARPA funds, because I can tell you right now, there's going to be ARPA money left over everywhere in the country. It's the agencies that stay in contact and build rapport with the other parts of their communities that are going to increase the chances of getting that money. The next area is community foundations. And I love community foundations. They're my favorite funding source. And the reason being is this. They raise money from individuals and businesses that live in the communities and work in the communities. And then they take the money they raise and they reinvest it and they grow the funds like a private equity firm would. And they grow these funds in what they call assets. They have to, by law, because of their IRS standing, spend 5% of their assets every year. Now, 5% doesn't sound exciting. The reality is it's 5% of about 75 to 100 billion dollars with a B. So 5% of that, you're looking at anywhere from $4 to $5 billion nationwide that has to be spent on projects. That's a lot of money. And the way they spend it is they will either set up grants, and they just have like funding streams, if you will. Some of them have a couple funding streams. I've seen large foundations that would have dozens and dozens of funding streams. And they'll have grant applications you'd fill out and submit. But if you don't see a funding stream that fits your project, don't worry. It's a relationship with them. You can call them up, present to them your project and how it solves the problems in your community and how you're going to implement it and what the problems are. And if they believe in your project, they'll actually set aside money for you. And here's the best thing. Community foundations are easy. They're 1/10 of the work of a federal grant. And if you've ever done a federal grant, they're a lot of work. I mean, it's a big booklet. Community foundations are 1/10 of that work. Great projects that get funded because they want to solve problems in that community's backyard. And these community foundations vary in size. Usually it depends on how big the region is. Urban areas, heavily populated, it might be 1 county, it might be 5 counties. Rural areas where there's a lot of rural area and there's not a lot of population, it might be 20 to 40 counties. But we're talking millions of dollars available. And if you want to learn more about community foundations, at the end of the presentation, I can coach you on how to find the local community foundation in your backyard. Manufacturing companies. If you have a manufacturing company in your backyard, some examples, ConocoPhillips, General Motors, Georgia Pacific, they all fund projects for public safety. As they look at it, one, they want to write off. They're a business, so they can offset their costs and they can offset their revenue. Secondly, their workers probably live in your community. Their customers are in your community. They want to give back to those communities. So they have what's called community investment or community development or community improvement programs. Those programs, as long as your project, you can show how the community will be enhanced, improved, allowing it to develop, creating a more stable environment for the community, they will fund your project. I see them funding hundreds and hundreds of projects a year for public safety. Public and private charities. Gary Sinise Foundation is the best example. Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. I have seen him fund 5 to 6 figure projects consistently over the years. And the application process, very simple. Public safety foundations. If you don't have a public safety foundation in your community, talk to some friends of the program and see if they can get one set up for you. These foundations can go to these charities. These foundations can go to these manufacturing companies. These foundations can go to the community foundation and they can get money on your behalf, write you a check and give you the money, or go out and buy the assets and donate the assets to you. Powerful, powerful. If you don't have a public safety foundation and you're looking to find out how to set one up, reach out to me after this class and I will get you directed to people that can help you. Service companies. Some examples: Firehouse Subs, MetLife Insurance, State Farm Insurance, Target, Walmart. These organizations will also grant. Same reasons the manufacturers do. They want the write-off. They want to offer support to the community. They want to make sure that the workers and the customers in that community are taken care of. Great sources of funding. Very, very, very few public safety agencies go after this money, maybe 2%. I was at a city council meeting last week, and I was talking to the council members about reaching out to the local businesses and how they like to fund projects for the community. They were like, we didn't even think of it. And most people don't. Again, nobody in this room that works in public safety got into it to be a grant expert. So it's understandable you haven't thought about these things, but definitely screen capture this page too. This is a good example of where you could find alternate sources of funding. So let's talk about the grant writing mindset. So what do you have to be good at writing grants and be ready to go? One is clarity of purpose. Clearly define your goals, your objectives, and the purpose of the public safety project. Purpose is greater than outcome. You have to have a reason why you want to get this grant. And the reason why is your problems that your community is experiencing. Articulate why it's important, how it's going to address a specific need or problem. Clear, compelling vision enhances your application. So you have to be good at painting a picture. Now, there's one of the ways I recommend, and this is for people that don't really feel comfortable writing. Write down this question and record yourself answering it. And the question you should ask is, what is the problems my community is facing? And then answer it and record your answer and transcribe it. Then ask yourself, why or how big of a problem is it? How many examples can I give about this problem? Record yourself and transcribe that. Then when it comes to the project, how is the project going to save time, save money, reduce liability, save lives? Record that. Implementation, if you need to record that as well, do that. But I think you could write out an implementation plan from day 1 to 1 year, just because you're very good at writing out plannings and structure like that as already from your jobs. But if not, record and transcribe that. Don't worry about being a great writer, be a great communicator. And then from there, you can refine the writing itself. Persuasive communication. Again, develop strong written and verbal communication skills. Like I just said, leverage recording and transcribing to effectively convey your project's merits. Craft a persuasive narrative that sways hearts and minds, highlighting the significance of the initiative, the impact, and the benefit. You have to show this is a big problem. This program is going to solve it. This is the benefit we're going to achieve from it. Be persuasive. You have to sell people that what your vision is the vision that solves the problem. Research, data analysis. Conduct thorough research to support the proposal. Data is king when writing grants. You need to have relevant data, stats, and evidence. Just like in law enforcement, if you work in investigations, you need evidence that shows that this is the person, this suspect committed the crime. You need to show evidence that this is a problem and this project will solve it. You need to show need and make the need look as big as possible. Don't embellish, just get creative and show how many ways this is a problem. A well-informed and evidence-based approach only increases your credibility and enhances your chances of securing funding. Stakeholder engagement. Engage with stakeholders that are likely going to be impacted or have an interest in the project. Talk to community members, local organizations, small business owners. If there's other government agencies in your community that would benefit from this project, bring them in. Make this a multifaceted project, and potential funders. You might be surprised. Talking to the local community, you might raise money. I had a project where I had a lieutenant talk to the local business owners in his town. He got 80% of the money for the project because these organizations believe so much in the project. They not only were going to support it, they wrote him checks for it too. Build those relationships, gain support, gather endorsements. Don't feel like you can't work with other people and you got to keep this close to the vest. There are so many parts of your community that would benefit from your projects that probably don't even know they exist. Have conversations with them. The bigger the community involvement, the better chance you're going to get the approvals you need and better chance you're going to get the funding in your backyard and maybe not even have to pursue a grant. Grant writing skills. Develop strong grant writing skills to convey your project's details, goals, outcomes. Understand the requirements of the application and tailor your proposal accordingly. Articulate your public safety budgets, implementation plans, evaluation strategies, sustainability measures. There's a couple ways you can do this nowadays. One, work with your local high school English department, or if you have a college in your or university, work with their English department to help you hone in on that grammar and content and talk in an active voice versus a passive voice. Also, leverage ChatGPT. Ask it questions about how to properly convey what you're looking to convey, your bullet points. Use that as a guide and then craft that to specifically fit your community. Don't have ChatGPT write it for you, but have it give you ideas to open up your minds and then use that. And then what I also recommend is use a program like Grammarly to tighten up that grammar. Folks, it's never about resources. It's always about resourcefulness. There's always solutions around you. It's just a matter of looking and seeing what's around you to find them. Emotional intelligence. Understand and navigate the emotions and motivations of individuals involved in the grant application process. Develop empathy, active listening skills, and the ability to build rapport with grant reviewers. One of the things that I teach Have conversations with these grant reviewers. Have conversations with the grantors. Build rapport with them. Get them to see your project from you, the person, as opposed from your agency. Example, I live in St. Charles, Illinois. So if I was working on a grant for the St. Charles Fire Department, I would reach out to that grantor. I would introduce myself as Lieutenant Michael Asimor, and I would explain what I'm looking to do. And I would ask for tips and advice on how to best use his time by putting something in front of him that's worth him reading. And now when he gets that application and justification paper, he looks at it and goes, St. Charles Fire Department. Oh, yeah, it's Lieutenant Michael Asimor. I remember talking to him. Now there's a face and a voice to the grant. Emotional intelligence can help you effectively communicate concerns and build relationships. Grants are about solving problems in people's backyards. Grants are about relationships. The federal government has conditioned us to think grants are about filling out an application, writing a narrative, submitting it, and then crossing your fingers. It's the opposite, solving problems in your backyard. Last, resilience and persistence. The grant application process can be challenging and competitive. Maintain a resilient mindset, stay persistent, learn from setbacks and rejections, use feedback from previous applications to improve future proposals. Adapt and refine your approach as needed, ensuring you remain committed to your public safety project goals. If anybody that's in this room wants us to look at an old application or an old narrative, you can send it to us. My team will look at it and we can give you tips on what we would recommend you do next time. But realize this is not a 100% success game. Your percentage of success will probably be lower than you want at first. But if you're persistent and keep going and push back through the no's and keep going toward the yeses, the odds you'll get your funding much quicker. So definitely realize, play the long game. You're going to get rejections. You're going to see setbacks, but leverage relationships with people that can help you modify and optimize what you've turned in before to make it better. Call to action. So before we leave this room and before we open up to questions, I want you to decide to take some action. And what I want you to do is this. If you have a project in mind, know your outcome. What do you want to get accomplished? If you don't have a project yet, I want you to figure out one that is going to add value to your community. Then from there, I want you to know your why. Why is this project important to you? The drive in life is always in the why. It's always 80% why, 20% how. So your why needs to be bigger than your outcome. So if you want to buy X or you want to implement project X, why? I want to do it because of this. A, B, C, D, E, F. The more whys, the greater you're going to have the motivation to get the project funded. And then take massive action. So what does massive action look like? Start a funding division or a funding team to master the grant game. Build out or invest in high quality grant info, specific to your city, county, region, and state, specific to the equipment, software, and training you sell. So if you're a business, you need to build a grant team and you need to identify where is there grants for my equipment? Where are there grants for my software? Where are there grants for my training? And if you're an agency, where are there grants for my city? Where are there grants for my county? And where are there grants for my state or region? Determine that and build a list or buy a list. You know, my company sells grant lists. We sell grant information. We work with businesses and craft a custom grant solution for their customers. So there's plenty of resources out there. Hire a consultant, a strategist, or a coach who understands the grant funding process. You know, companies like mine are everywhere. If you feel that you have some connection to me and my company, we would love to work with you. But find somebody that you have synergy with that can help you maneuver through the process, especially if your plate is full. If you don't have the time to do this and adding this to your plate will never get done, that's when you need to hire that strategist or coach or consultant. Then notice the results you're getting. You cannot manage what you don't measure. You have to be able to manage the results. So have timelines, have dollar amounts, have projects, and then manage if you're getting closer to those or farther away. And if you're getting farther away, change your approach based on the assessment of the progress. You might need to work on strategies. It might be beliefs. It might be you need to bring someone else in to help right the ship. But realize if you're not seeing the results, it's not failure if you learn to change it. If you give up, that's failure. But if you say, okay, we're not getting what we want, let's try this. Or we're not getting here, let's try that. Be flexible in your mind, and that is the best way to succeed. So what I'm going to do now is I want to open up to questions. I'll take questions till the end of the hour. But if you want to get a hold of me, screen capture this. My phone number, that's my mobile, 630-877-3130. My email is masimor@dynamicinternational.net. Our website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the YouTube channel below. That's where this class will be on in about a week. And all our past classes and our 2-minute social media posts are all on our YouTube channel. So you can go and watch those anytime you like. But with that, I'd like to stop my screen share right now and open it up to any questions anybody might have. And if you don't have questions, I really appreciate your time. And if you feel this was of value, let us know in the chat. Let us know through an email, referrals, whatever we can do to support this community. Our goal is to solve the funding problem. But if you don't have questions, I'm done for today. And come back again. My classes are constantly evolving. I'm always adding new content. So if we can add more value, or if there's something you feel we should cover in our class, please let us know. We'll be happy to add that. But I'll stay on here. Feel free to type a question. Oh, my pleasure, Katie. Feel free to type in any questions you have. If there's a specific project you're looking for help in figuring out where there's funding, happy to discuss that with you as well. But if not, again, really appreciate your time. Great question, John. Do you feel if paid professional is a good choice? It depends on the professional. One, you got to have synergy with them. You got to feel like there's rapport there. Two, they have to make sense. I like to use what I call a common sense corner is what I call it. And when I'm given information, I go to my corner and I ask myself, okay, does that make sense? Is there logic behind it? Are there questions that come to mind that I feel they're answering or not answering? Not all experts are created equal. So you really want to make sure that if you have a paid professional, that you feel like they're getting value, and they feel like they're giving value to you and your organization. I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope it helped. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words about the class. So I'm happy to stay in here about 5 more minutes, and then I'm giving another class at the top of the hour. Yes, I have. Fire station grants, an area to look at, Daryl. Community development grants that your state offers. There's about usually $3 billion a year, community development grants nationwide. That's a great source. That would be one way. You might want to talk to the local community foundation. The way you find your local community foundation is you would type in the county your agency's in, the state your agency's in, community foundation, hit search on Google. It'll be one of the first 3 to 5 web pages that come up. And then I would go to, and I would start a conversation and a dialogue with the grant division. of that community foundation, and they would be a great source. A lot of businesses will donate funds for something like that. Brandon A, if as someone completely new to the grant writing, what do you feel is the easiest grant or project to tackle for a department consisting of approximately 90 some officers in a growing city? Good question. You know what? Truthfully, what I would recommend is this. The lower the cost of a grant, so if it's like a 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 hour project as an example, you got a bigger pool of funders. So to me, I would probably start with a small project like that. Do that. I would come back to this class. I would also sign up for any grant writing classes that you can find, ideally free. Some of them cost up to like $500. We're actually in the process of putting together our own grant writing class. But what I would really do is find a project, find some grants to apply for, have conversations with the grantors and be honest with them. This is my first time writing a grant. I'm going to apply for a grant. We have this problem. We're looking for this much money to implement this project. Haven't written a grant before. Any tips and advice you can give me? I would do that. I would also Google grant writers and see if you can find a list of grant writers in your community. Let's see here. Do you think it's a cost effective for municipality with a budget 100+ million it depends on how much budget's left over. If you have room in your budget for a grant writer, and if and let's be honest, not all grant writers are created equal. Some are better than others. If you find one that you feel would be a good asset full time, then I think it's great. If not, you can hire grant writers. And if anyone's looking for a grant writer, email me. I will get you in touch with writers and get you in touch with a platform that we're going to be bringing to the market in the coming weeks, where you can find writers. So if you're looking for writers and you're not sure if you want to hire someone full time, email me and I will get you in contact with some writers to talk to. Some in your backyard, some specializing in your specific type of agency you are. Got 2 more minutes of questions. Happy to answer them. Actually, I might make it just 1 minute because I got to get over to that other meeting. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to put it in that chat. If you don't, no worries. I really appreciate your time. I hope you felt this was of value today, and hope you left here with some good information. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to close this room up, and I will thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. You have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and until we talk again.